Hello and welcome everybody tuning in today. I'm FedScoop Editor-in-Chief Billy Mitchell, and I'm joined today by Phil Quade, CISO of Fortinet, in conjunction with Fortinet's Security Transformation Summit 2020. And Phil and I are going to talk about the skills gap today. Some exciting stuff going on and how the federal government is working to bolster the skills gap that is currently causing some challenges. So let's start there with the challenge. What's the biggest challenge you see facing the cybersecurity field today, and is that the skills gap?
Hi, Billy, and thanks for having me here. Good question. There's so many things you can choose from. You could choose from advanced persistent threats. You could talk about supply chain. You could talk about the future quantum computers' impact on cryptography, or you could even talk about the convergence of the cyber and physical domain and the data that will be exchanged in those converged domains. But one of the things that's been enduring, not only in the U.S. government and the commercial side as well, is the more softer side of things, which is the cybersecurity skills gap problem. Right now, collectively, we have about 2.8 million folks in the cybersecurity field, but we need 4 million more. That's a big number, and we're not just going to magically produce a whole bunch more computer science degreed people. So what we need to come up with is an approach that addresses that cybersecurity skills gap problem, not only for U.S. government folks, but obviously for the larger commercial sector as well.
So Phil, how are we going to do that? As people look to narrow the skills gap, what elements are most important to ensuring that success? I know in your talk at the summit, you talked about some interesting points in economics and some creativity that we can embrace to sort of take things like diversity into account. But I'd love to hear, how we're going to narrow this issue and things that will make sure that we're successful in bringing more people to this field.
So what I'd like to do is rely on something that works in other fields. So last year, me and some colleagues, we wrote a book that talked about the importance of treating cybersecurity like a science. And I won't go into that here. But I have a similar approach here, which is let's take a page from the book of economics and apply it to the cybersecurity skills gap problem. Specifically, let's do things to work both the supply side and the demand side of the equation. So what I had the opportunity to talk about at the Fortinet Federal Conference not too long ago was, what are some things specifically we could do to bolster the supply and the demand. So on the supply side, I led with talking about the topic of diversity, and not just the traditional important definitions of diversity, but specifically diversity of perspective and background. And what I was talking about is broadening the number of people we bring into the cybersecurity field. They don't all have to be computer science degreed people. For that matter, they don't even need to be degreed people for some of these jobs that we have. Let's bring them in, leverage a larger pool of candidates. But importantly, we're also getting a more diverse set of perspectives. And that's always a healthy thing in a field that requires so much analysis like cybersecurity. So diversity of perspective was a big part of it. A second part of the thing we talked about in terms of bolstering the supply would be instituting or reinstituting the old guild model. It was very popular in the Middle Ages, but the guild model is one about career progression. It involves bringing a bunch of people in as apprentices in cybersecurity, giving them the right type of training and education and coaching to coach them up to become journeymen, and the different types of job assignments to ultimately allow them to become masters of their field. So diversity is a big part of it. An enduring supply chain via a guild model, and then training, of course, online training at the pace and the place of students is a really part of bolstering the supply part of the equation. And unless you have some follow-on questions for that, I also have a couple of things I'd like to talk about on the demand side as well.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So in addition to working supply, well, economics says you need to work demand as well. And here's where some of the things that my company sell and other companies sell can really help us out here. Fortinet is especially good at developing products that are reduce complexity. They're highly automated, and these highly automated and integrated technologies can go a long way towards taking jobs that we rely humans to do and put that off a machine and put that on the shoulders of machines. So we need to better leverage automation and integration to help reduce the demand. And of course, that decreases the complexity. And this, in the second part of the demand reduction equation is about each of us taking an active role in writing job descriptions that don't automatically start with something like you need a 4-year degree in computer science or double E or something like that. We need to write job descriptions that open up our field to those who have different types of educational background. And so the call to action here on the demand side is to write job descriptions that don't require the traditional degrees that we typically ask for in the computer science, cybersecurity field.
Phil, I think that's a great way to look at it, the economics of it all, supply and demand. You mentioned something that I find really interesting, and I've heard a lot before on the technology side and how it affects the skills gap and automating some of those skills to kind of reduce the demand. So I'd love to continue on that tangent and hear from you a little bit more about how do the advancements in the technology in particular affect this skills gap that exists.
Yes, that's the really good news, that you can indeed buy your way out of some of this. And that's by leveraging the right types of automated and integrated technology to make the job easier, those that we're asking to do them. You know, because automation reduces the complexity on the humans, and the automated analytics that you get out of these technologies allow some higher order thinking of the people who you bring on to take these types of jobs. So we could have cybersecurity, we could have security operations center analysts take on extraordinarily important jobs and do them very, very well by leveraging highly automated and integrated cybersecurity technologies that give them the type of visibility and alerts they need to do a SOC operations. Same is true of incident response type people. There's lots of technologies available that you can buy. You know, Fortinet's a great maker of an EDR product that allows you to, that automatically will alert you to risky situations and can automatically mitigate them or sandbox them up until time you have a more advanced human come on board. So we really can use some Fortinet technologies to drive down the complexity and drive down the demand on so many people.
Phil, as we close out here, one last question. We can't have any sort of conversation these days without addressing sort of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the pandemic has impacted the skills gap problem and any of those solutions we've already mentioned.
Now, this is one of those areas where hopefully we'll look back at the COVID-19 year of 2020 and realize that there are a couple of good things that did come out of it. And this is in fact one of them, that as many people stayed home and worked from home, they turned towards online training. And what they saw is that they could become not only a whole lot smarter on cybersecurity, but they become a whole lot more skilled and can in fact enter this field. You know, Fortinet opened up its advanced cybersecurity training through our NSE Institute, and it was taken by tens and tens of thousands of people. And it's one of those things where with that online training available at the time and place of the users, you know, the stay-at-home users, I think that we'll find that stay-home users, diverse workforces, remote workforces saw 2020, the year of COVID-19, as one in which their aperture was opened up and they realized they can indeed get into the cybersecurity field. So there's lots of bad things that have happened this year, you know, that you know makes you just feel horrible. But there are a couple of bright things, and one of them is that people are bolstering their skills on their own time and at their own place, and that will ultimately posture them to advance in our society, hopefully in the cybersecurity field.
Absolutely. Phil, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing some of those thoughts and insights on the skills gap. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me today.